Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Doss here. Today is going to be a little bit different because if you are watching this today that's posted, it's my birthday. Yeah, I'm gonna need a walker and a cane real soon, you know? I'm getting old. I'm getting old. But I thought I might as well do a much more chill, much more kind of fun video as a little birthday thing. I want to have this posted preferably on Thursday on my actual birthday so that I can relax and enjoy myself on my actual birthday on Friday because I'm gonna be hanging out with family. Then on Saturday I'll be hanging out with some friends, and then Sunday hopefully for rest. So I thought, why not just do a tier list? So I'm somebody who's been around it with Dead by Daylight ever since its beta, all the way back in 2016. I've seen every single chapter release. I've been around for all the changes and everything. So I thought I'd go ahead and give a tier list ranking of all the Dead by Daylight chapters that exist in the game. Now, obviously, this tier list here doesn't include the original killers such as Trapper, Wraith, Hillbilly, but they probably would go in their own tier, just slated as the originals. This isn't going to have any type of concrete rules. It's going to be more so like my own personal opinion, essentially. And I do need to make this very clear. This is my opinion. By all means, everybody might have separate rankings for stuff, but it's just gonna be mine. I'm gonna take into consideration stuff like the perks that came out, stuff like cosmetics, maybe maps, stuff like that, and what it did for the game, essentially. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Alrighty, I had to do a little bit of shuffling around for this because I needed to make this bigger for myself because this was small as hell. So I don't know if this is in order of its release. It looks relatively in order, but again, it's going to be a nice fun little video. All right, so first off is The Last Breath. This was the first ever DLC that Dead by Daylight received. It included the nurse and Nia and a brand new map, which was Father Campbell's chapel. The nurse has been by far the most impactful killer in the entire history of this goddamn game. She has been S tier ever since her release because she just completely disregards the actual purpose of the game, how the game works. She came with pretty decent perks, and Nia also came with some nice perks as well, being bounce hunting, urban evasion, streetwise, stuff like that. I think, considering it was the first ever DLC, came with a new map, both characters have pretty influential perks and are pretty strong. I would have to rate The Last Breath a solid A tier. Overall, a good killer design, even though it's the strongest killer imaginable. Pretty decent survivor design and really good perks all around. The map isn't my favorite, but still one of the most influential things to ever happen. Next up is the Halloween chapter. This was the first ever licensed chapter we got in the game. This is what set the precedent for Dead by Daylight, having collaborations and licenses. And Myers, up until recently, has been pretty much the same ever since. It also brought one of the strongest survivor perks in history, being Decisive Strike. Decisive Strike was the meta for years and years and years and years and years. The map Lapkin Lane hasn't been great. It was a terrible, terrible map for killer for the longest time. And then when it got the kind of like retooling and retexturing, I believe it was last year or the year before, it became a terrible map for survivor. Now, this is a bit difficult because some of Lori's perks are not great. Some of Myers' perks aren't amazing. But this is a very influential chapter. But I don't think, besides it bringing the ability to have other collaborations in the game, I don't think it brought that much into it. I'm going to rate Halloween, I'm going to rate it an A. Simply because it's got that factor that it was what allowed Dead by Daylight to have the collaborations that we have today. Next up is Of Flesh and Mud. This was the Hags chapter. She came with Ace. Now, obviously, the Hag introduced Hex Totems, which have been a staple in Dead by Daylight ever since. Ace's perks haven't been super amazing, and honestly, the Hag brought in one of, if not my least favorite maps, Backwater Swamp. The Hag herself isn't really a great killer. I don't really like going against the hag. I don't like playing as the hag. Cosmetic wise, I don't think there's really anything going for her. Ace has some funky cosmetics, but I think respectfully, a Flesh and Mud is going to be a C tier. Next up is our first solo paragraph, is what they used to be called. I actually don't think they're called paragraphs anymore, but it's the Left 4 Dead collaboration, the Left Behind paragraph that brought in Bill Overbeck and some cosmetics for the original survivors that were Left 4 Dead themed. Bill had some pretty good perks, being Borrowed Time and Unbreakable. His last perk isn't really that great, but it was also just Bill that came in. So I can't really have a map being ranked and cosmetics being ranked because it is a licensed thing. But the thing is, the Bill chapter is free because Valve specifically said it had to be free. So I think for the fact that it's completely free and pretty good perks and a pretty iconic character, it's going to be a B tier. Now up next is Spark of Madness. This is the Doctor and Fang's chapter. Now Fang obviously has been one of the favorite survivors of the community. She gets all the cosmetics, but she has some pretty nice perks. She's got a great perk for beginner survivors, being Technician, where you can block the skill checks. You've got Alert, that gives you good information, and you've got Lithe, which is one of my favorite exhaustion perks to use. And then Doctor is a pretty good killer for beginners. Pretty simple, pretty good power, not terrible to go against. The map is okay as well. It's not terrible, but it's not good. It's not great either. Perks wise, I mean, we got Modern Abuse with Killer. I believe Overcharge as well. Not super like meaningful stuff, but overall pretty decent. I'm gonna give Spark of Madness a B. Now Lullaby for the Dark. This is the Huntress's chapter, which she came with David and her own map being the Redwood Forest. Huntress has been a staple of Dead by Daylight, probably one of the more iconic killers. A relatively more reliant killer. The map, I'm not a huge fan of the map. It's huge. I don't super like it on Survivor, and I definitely don't like it on Killer. David obviously had a meta-defining perk for a long-ass time, being Dead Hard. And he also has one of the worst perks in the game, being No Mither. But David's also a very solid character. I think it's a very good overall, all-around chapter, so I think a Lullaby for the Dark is going to get a B. Now Leatherface. Now Leatherface is a rough paragraph. Leatherface was actually rushed. This was originally supposed to come out with Kate, and it just was completely rushed. If you aren't aware, Leatherface, when he first came out, had the exact same add-ons as Hillbilly. So he was literally just unfinished. And he obviously didn't come with any map, and then he didn't get cosmetics until much into the future. We haven't really got anything since. I think Bubba is a fine killer. I think he's okay. Obviously, he's been brought into more popularity with an old friend of mine, Epidemi. He's kind of brought Leatherface into the forefront of popularity, but I would have to say Leatherface is a C tier. Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, Nightmare on Elm Street is already gonna get docked points because it is the Jackie Earle Haley 2010 remake version. It is not the Robert Englund version that we all know, love, and want. And I don't know if we'll ever get that version. Freddy has also been a very problematic killer. He was relatively okay at the start, really bad in the middle, super strong afterwards, and then he's more so in a strong spot but not a overpowering spot at the moment. He's a bit of a like black sheep on this list here. Obviously the chapter brought in Bad Hand Preschool, which for the longest time had like 7 iterations of it. All of them not great. Freddy's power has obviously been super weird and different throughout the years. Quentin as well, not super great perks. So I think overall, respectfully, I think Nightmare on Elm Street is going to have to be a D. It's not enough redeeming factors for me to bring it into C. Freddy has been all over the place. They have no cosmetics. The license holders have been the most difficult to work with for behavior. The maps or map now is not great, and the perks are just not great either. So gonna have to rank it as a D. Now Saw. And I know a lot of people probably came in with Saw. I know Starver came in with Saw, and Saw kind of like was when like the upward trend of Dead by Daylight kind of started, in my opinion. I saw brought in another problematic map being Gideon's Meat Plant, aka Pallet City, but it has been one of the better licenses for Behavior to work with. We've gotten plenty of cosmetics for it. We got a whole tome dedicated to Saw. And we have some okay perks with both of them. Obviously, what comes to mind with one of them would be um, the perk that lets you see when a generator is regressing. I'm blanking on the name of it right now on Killer. And then obviously with Detective Tap, we had Tenacity for the longest time, but Tenacity has recently been gutted. But Pig's overall a very fun killer to play against. I think the whole Jigsaw aspect is a really, really, really interesting concept to bring Saw into Dead by Daylight. I just think it's a whole lot of fun. I think the main thing that brings it down for me is the map, but I think Saw would be a solid C tier. Next up is Curtain Call. This is the Clowns chapter along with Kate. Clown has been kind of a subpar killer. He had recently gotten a buff that made him immensely oppressive. Kate has been a pretty nice survivor. Kate has actually really good perks. She has perks like Dance With Me, which are pretty nice and pretty good to combo. Pretty good cosmetics for both of them. The map that came with the clown is as well not my favorite, but it's not terrible. It's okay. Like, it's not superly survivor side, superly killer side in my opinion. I think it's fine. I think it's very much middle of the road. I'd have to give Curtain Call, I'm gonna give it a C. Simply because the clown, his power is so subpar that it's keeping it from a B. If the clown was more engaging, more fun to play as and against, I probably would bump it up to a B. But Kate can't do all the heavy lifting, even though Kate is a really good survivor and pretty good perks on her. I'm gonna be a C. Moving on is Shattered Bloodline. This is the Spirits chapter, along with Adam Francis. Again, Spirit is another iconic character in Dead by Daylight. Shifted the meta a ton. Pretty interesting perks for both of them. Adam has two of my favorite Mimi perks, being Autodidact and Diversion, aka Pebble. I think they're just super silly, super fun. I actually really like the Yamaoka Estate map. I think it's a pretty decent map. There's pretty decent palettes, pretty decent loops. Main building is pretty fun. I think it's a okay map for it. It's not like something amazing, not one of my favorites, not something that's super biased with me. But I'm going to have to give Shattered Bloodline a solid A. I think Adam and Spirit both have really good cosmetics. Spirit has a really interesting power, pretty fun power. I actually do like going against Spirit because I like trying to challenge myself with trying to mind game her. And I think Adam overall is a pretty fun and unique survivor. Overall, there's not really that much I can really say against it. Obviously, Spirit was much stronger in the beginning. Had super powerful add-ons, stuff like that. But overall, I've liked Shattered Bloodline. Now, after that is Darkness Among Us. This is the Legions chapter. Came out with Jeff and Ormond. Now, personally, I don't like Ormond simply because in the past when I've played with Paulie and other people from his community would always put map offerings for Ormond. So we'd always either go to that or to RBD. And I got so sick of it. I got so tired of it. I don't super enjoy playing as Ormond as a killer. And Legion, even though I like a lot of the cosmetics, I think Legion is a very subpar killer. It could have been such a cooler killer with how the trailer portrayed it. I think it's meh. And then Jeff doesn't really have great cosmetics either. I don't think either of them have super amazing perks. I mean, Jeff had a really good perk being Distortion, and then it got completely neutered and gutted. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to rate Darkness Among Us a C. Up next is Demise of the Faithful. If you aren't aware, I really like the Plague. I love the Vommy Mommy. I think she's pretty fun to play as and play against. I love her whole aesthetic. I like a lot of the cosmetics she has. I don't like her map. Temporal Purgation is just an alternate Red Forest, and it is massive. I really don't like playing it on either side. But I really like Plague. So, due to that and due to the fact that She's one of the first killers that were voice acted, and she's such an interesting and unique take on a killer that she's going to be getting a solid B tier. Now, up next is another paragraph. We got a survivor paragraph with Ash versus Evil Dead. Now, Ash, the fact that he's fully voice acted by Bruce Campbell is awesome. Modeled after him, obviously, as well. Got the likeness and everything. However, he's all that came with this. It was only Ash. No map, no killer, nothing. On top of that, Ash hasn't really gotten a whole lot. Ash was part of a tome, but he's been really lackluster, and his perks are terrible. Like, Flip Flop is kind of okay. Metal Man used to be broken, and now it's meh. I think Ash is pretty lackluster. Obviously, like, the memes of Ash are pretty cool, but I think Ash is going to be another D tier. Going from a survivor chapter to a killer chapter, we have Ghostface. Now, this was the 3rd year anniversary chapter, and this was huge. A lot of people wanted Scream in the game, and technically this still isn't Scream. This is just the license for the Fun World mask of Ghostface. However, Ghostface really embodied what people wanted with a stealth killer. The fact that you're able to crouch and lean, and he's super sneaky, super small, is super fun. He's also got a ton of personality with his killer, and he's got so many cosmetics to choose from. For being just a killer-only chapter, Ghostface does a lot of heavy lifting. His power has been pretty much untouched for the most part. There's been some tweaks to make it so that you don't get revealed out of your power as easily and as quickly, because it had a bit of like weird bugginess to it. But I think Ghostface is a great chapter. His perks are pretty decent as well. I'm All Yours is a great perk to run. I think just Ghostface himself is so good. Even without a map, even without a survivor with him, Ghostface is going to be getting a solid A tier from me. And then we have Stranger Things. This is what brought Dead by Daylight truly into the mainstream. People who I was working with at the time who had no idea what Dead by Daylight was immediately knew what it was, simply because of the fact that it was collaborating with Stranger Things. Obviously, at the time of this, Stranger Things was at its peak, at its apex. It was massive. It was huge. This was the first ever moment that we had 2 survivors in a chapter. This was insane. Demogorgon has been a very beloved killer. He's a bit weak, but he's still very fun to play against. Steve has been annoying because of the whole Steve goal thing. Nancy has kind of been in the middle of the road. Hawkins, even though it's not an amazing map to play on, the aesthetic of it is amazing. I think just for the amount of detail and love that Stranger Things got, it's gonna have to get an A. It also introduced dual survivors and actually brought in a lot of perks that are very used even in the game today. Inner Strength is something that's used a lot. Babysitter's got a resurgence. Surge or Jolt, whatever you want to call it, has been used quite a lot with Killer. Honestly, like, just very good chapter overall. And we have Cursed Legacy. This is the Oni and Yui. Now, Oni being the first ever killer who is directly related to another killer on the roster. Oni is a very fun killer to play against. I genuinely really like Yui, and I think both their Oni's perks are somewhat okay, but Yui's perks are pretty fun. Being able to reset palettes, stuff like that, breakout existing is pretty fun. Again, there was a brand new Yamaoka map. However, I believe with Oni, it was the Shrine that came out, and the Shrine, in my opinion, is the worst of the two. Just because you've got the gen on the Shrine at the top, and it's so easy to guard it, and to guard either side of the map, you can directly cut off one side. I think simply because of Oni and the cosmetics, the great cosmetics that Oni and Yui have, but the mid perks on Oni and pretty decent perks on Yui and the man map, I think Cursed Legacy is going to get a B, but it's a very high B. And after that, we have the Fake Out, because everyone thought this was Pinhead, but it was Chains of Hate. It's the Death Slinger along with the Dead Dog map and Zarina. Death Slinger, it was I believe the only other range killer besides Huntress at this time, if I am correct. Yeah, there wasn't a range killer. I guess, well, technically the Plague. The Plague, I guess, is another range killer, but Death Slinger was really truly the next range killer. Now, Dead Dog is a pretty interesting map. It's a very killer-sided map. It's very small. It's very easy to protect generators on it. But it was a very different aesthetic. Deathslinger was extremely strong at the start because you were able to basically instant aim and shoot. And Zarina is actually a really, really nice survivor. Pretty decent perks. She brought in Off the Record, which has been a staple in the anti-tunneling builds for survivors for ages. It recently got changed, but then it got changed again to re-add the anti-tunnel factor to it. Overall, I think Chains of Hate was a pretty decent chapter. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad by any stretch of the means, so I think Chains of Hate is a solid B. Now, next up is Silent Hill. This was the first ever video game full-on chapter collaboration we got. Obviously, we had Left 4 Dead prior, but that was a paragraph that was only Survivor, and for a while it was only PC. This is the first ever full-on chapter we got. This was the 4-year anniversary. It brought in the iconic Pyramid Head. It brought in Cheryl Mason. Both of them have had amazing cosmetics. Midwich is one of my favorite maps in general. On both sides, I really like running Midwich on Survivor. I like running on a killer. Obviously, this is a great map for specific killers, but it was phenomenal, fantastic. The music was amazing. The hype for it was great. In my opinion, I think respectfully, the Silent Hill chapter is our first S tier. I think the perks are pretty fun. I used Soul Guard all the time back in the day. A lot of Pyramid Head perks have been really, really getting a lot of use recently. Trail of Torment has been very, very consistent. Force Penance is kind of fun to use, but overall, I think it is a amazing, amazing chapter and a great attention to detail. Amazing chapter, huge. After that, we got Zen Beyond. This is the Blight chapter, the introduction of another high tier killer. Relatively fun to play as and to go against, in my opinion. Felix was a very suave survivor a lot of people were excited for, and obviously Blight brought in one of the strongest hexes ever, being Hex Undying. Now, back then, Hex Undying was immensely overpowered, and Blight was actually a lot different. His camera view was super low for some reason, but super fun. They didn't come with a map, unfortunately. It sucks. I would have loved some like macabre, maybe like laboratory type of thing where the Blight would do his experiments on the other killers and stuff. But overall, the perks have been good. Cosmetics have been pretty good for both of them. I think Zen Beyond was a solid A tier. I move on to Binding of Kin, one of the most problematic chapters ever. This broke the game completely for an extended period of time. I mean, the twins are still kind of broken to this day. LED's a pretty decent survivor, but with pretty bad perks, no map, nothing really going for them. So, unfortunately, Binding Kid is going to be a D tier. There's not that much to redeem it. I think it's kind of on par with the other D tiers in here. It's just a missed chapter altogether. Move on to All Kill, the Trickster and Yun Jin. Now, the whole teasers and the trailer for All Kill was super interesting. This was a very big change in advertisement for it, because it was kind of like they made it like a whole anime animation for it. Trickster is a very interesting killer. He's not super amazing. He's not super strong. He's probably one of the weaker range killers. His aesthetic's pretty okay. Yun Jin has a pretty good aesthetic, but again, no map. The perks that came with them are okay. Yun Jin doesn't have that many great perks, and Trickster, he kind of only really has Starstruck. So, unfortunately, I'm going to give All Kill a C tier. But then we move on to Resident Evil. This was the 5th year anniversary chapter. This was huge. Absolutely huge. This was another duo survivor chapter. You got Leon and Jill, but then on top of that, you had legendary cosmetics that gave you Claire and Chris. The main killer was Nemesis, and the map was RPD. Now, obviously, at launch, RPD was a pain in the ass. It was huge as hell, and you had a full 3rd floor being the library. But it brought in such an iconic franchise into Dead by Daylight, a highly requested one, and it brought in the first like real crossover of Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Now, obviously, as time has gone on, they've gotten more cosmetics. The map has been updated and stuff like that, but this base map simply because the updated map came up with feature chapter. I think respectfully, Resident Evil is going to be an A tier. Simply because Nemesis's power isn't super true to Nemesis. Obviously with Pyramid Head, they had to like come up with a power that worked with him, but with Nemesis, like, I don't know, Nemesis just doesn't feel like Nemesis in DBD. And with the launch of RPD was super problematic, but the perks for all of them are pretty good. Lethal Pursuer is an amazing killer perk. You've got Blast Mine and Flashbang and stuff like that for Joe and Leon. You've got Resurgence. Overall, really, really good perks for Survivor and pretty decent perks on Killer Eruption as well as another great perk. It's just the size of RPD is what really brings it down, and the fact that Nemesis just doesn't feel truly like Nemesis. But it's still a fantastic chapter. But then we move on to a killer paragraph being Hellraiser, the paragraph that's in this list that you can no longer get in Dead by Daylight. Now, Pinhead was a super fun killer. I fully enjoyed Pinhead. I was super shocked and excited that Pinhead was in. I actually never really expected Hellraiser to be in this. The fact that shortly after his release, we got the actual voice actor for Pinhead to reprise his role and voice the character for us was huge. With it just being him, just being a killer and not really getting a whole lot of cosmetics, unfortunately I have to give him a B. But Pinhead brought in really good perks. Like, realistically, I think all three of his perks are amazing. You have Deadlock, you have Gift of Pain, and you have Hex Plaything. They're all great perks, all really good all-rounders, can work on almost any killer. He's a super fun killer to go against. I think that gives him a solid middle-of-the-road B tier. But then we have a Survivor paragraph. Hour of the Witch. This brought in Michaela, and this brought in Boon totems. Now, Boons were super problematic at the start. Now, Michaela, aesthetic-wise, is a fantastic Survivor. Really good aesthetic, really good cosmetics. Didn't come with a map or anything like that. And her perks aren't really that great anymore. At the start, Circle of Healing was fucking amazing, but overall not super good. I think just because of how things are now, Hour of the Witch is gonna have to be a C tier. I can't give it a B tier with Hellraiser simply because Hellraiser just has so many better perks than Michaela does. So Michaela's gonna be C. Then we have Portrait of a Murderer. My bad. We have The Artist, which is getting a ton of skin love. It kind of has a cult following. Now, Jonah isn't really a beloved survivor and he does not really have good perks. But The Artist brought in Scourge Hook Pain Res, which is probably one of the most used killer perks to date. It was super strong when it first came out. It's still pretty strong, but it brought in one of the worst killer maps ever, being a super survivor map, being Eerie of Crows. Terrible to go against this killer. Still is pretty bad. Fortunately, the Artist can't really raise it up that much because Victoria's perks are so mid and the map is just so bad. Jonah doesn't really have good cosmetics, so unfortunately it's going to be a C tier for me. Then we have Sadako Rising, the Ringu. This is a super interesting collab because nobody really could figure out how Sadako could work, and we got it. We got a somewhat original survivor, being a aged up version of the baby from the first Ringu movie. Unfortunately, no map, and there originally was supposed to be a map paired with Sadako Rising, but it got scrapped. Sadako is a kind of interesting killer, kind of weird, like, playstyle, kind of problematic. Yoichi, his perks aren't really amazing. He brought in another Boon totem. I would have to say just overall Sadako Rising is relatively mid. Like, Sadako has Call of Brine, stuff like that, but nothing amazing. I think realistically for me, I'd have to rate it a C. It probably would be a high C, but it's a C nonetheless. And then we get Roots of Dread. I don't remember if this was the anniversary chapter or not. It was either this or it was Project W. Dredge is a pretty fun killer, pretty interesting killer. Hattie has a very huge cult following. Personally, I'm not a fan of Hattie. I don't really like the aesthetic of Hattie. Her perks aren't super amazing either, but Dredge is a super fun killer. Garden of Joy isn't great though. I really do not like Garden of Joy, like, at all. on either side. I think mainly because of the fact there's not super amazing perks for them and the map, I'm gonna have to rate them a C tier. But then we get Resident Evil Project W. This is part 2 of the Resident Evil chapter that brought in Wesker and brought in Ada and Rebecca as survivors. And did a whole rehash of the Resident Evil RPD map. Made it much more playable. Still not amazing, but it split up into 2 different sides. Got rid of the library. Wesker is an amazingly fun killer to play as. The perks for all 3 of them are all pretty fun. Cosmetic wise, pretty decent, pretty okay, pretty good. If I'm rating Resident Evil first chapter A because of the fun perks and the fact that this was a collaboration with it, I feel like Project W is kind of just an improvement overall. So I'm gonna rate it an A as well, not an S. If the perks were a little bit better and they got some better cosmetics, because they're really lacking the cosmetic department for this chapter in relation to the original Resident Evil 1. It would go to an S tier, but I think Wesker is a much more fun killer than Nemesis and a better killer overall, even though I prefer playing Nemesis. I just think Wesker does a better job as a Resident Evil killer. Then we have Forge and Fog, which run the Knight and Victorio. This is a stinker. The Knight is not a fun killer to play as, not a fun killer to go against. Victorio is a pretty cool looking survivor, but didn't really have any good perks. And I truly do not like the Borgo, the map that it came with. When it first came out, it was just a blinding red map. Then they gave it a nice cool blue undertone when they brought out D&D later on. But I think Forge and Fog is going to be a solid D tier. There's nothing really redeeming, in my opinion, of the chapter. And unfortunately, it's going to be the same thing with Tools of Torment. Yeah, it gave us 2 survivors, being Renato and Thalita, but their perks aren't really great. We have Skull Merchant. Her perks aren't amazing either. Skull Merchant's design is really weird. They changed up one of the old maps to work with Skull Merchant, but Skull Merchant's power has been in flux, much like Freddy, for a while. I think this is one of the most lackluster chapters, and so it's getting a D tier as well. Moving on, we've got End Transmission, the Singularity and Gabriel, which brought us Toba Landing. I am so sick of Toba Landing. I don't know why, but the map pool seems to be just nothing but Toba Landing. Gabriel, unfortunately, does not have really good cosmetics. He doesn't super have good perks as well. He had Made for This, which was exceedingly strong at the start, and then got nerfed. I still kind of like Made for This, but it's pretty meh. And you have Singularity. I don't super like going against Singularity. I think he's okay, but I know like people like Paulie absolutely hate going against him. Singularity is a kind of oppressive killer, but it's kind of like a kind of fun killer. But I think just with me not liking the map, the perks not being great on either side, and me being very middle of the road for both characters, I think that's going to give them a C tier. Then we have Nicolas Cage. A crazy left field paragraph that got included. It's just Nicolas Cage, the actor. His perks are super fun. His cosmetics have been great. I think he really he was a good addition to the game, brought in a lot of fun and everything. So I think respectfully, Nicolas Cage is an S tier. I think this was a phenomenal collaboration. A great decision from the developers. And honestly, like, I can't really think of anything bad about the Nicolas Cage chapter. Same can't be said for the Alien chapter, though. I really don't like the Nostromo map. It's, again, part of the map pool that I just always get this map. It's not a fun map for me. Ellen Ripley has some okay perks. Cosmetics are kind of okay. Xenomorph, I'm kind of middle of the road on. The power's not amazing. I know a lot of people wish we could have had the face huggers be part of the power and kind of feel more like the Xenomorph. I think, unfortunately, for that reason alone, it's going to be a C tier, but it's a high C tier because of the cosmetic wise for Xenomorph itself. But Nostromo's just not really a fun map. Xenomorph's not an amazing killer to play against and to play as, and Ellen's perks are pretty mid. Not fun, not super great. Then we have Chucky. Chucky was, I believe, the final chapter for 2023. This is a crazy get. Nobody thought we were going to get Chucky simply because he's super small. I think they implemented him pretty well into the game. He didn't come with a map, unfortunately, but he came with cosmetics, which can turn him into Tiffany. He's got some pretty decent cosmetics with them. Obviously, voiced by the actual actor who voices him in the movies. A relatively fun killer to play against and to play as. He was a lot more fun in the beginning, but I think it's a solid middle of the road. He's got some pretty fun perks as well. So I think Chucky is a solid B tier. But the next up, we have Alan Wake. This is another kind of surprise to me. Another paragraph for Survivor. He brought okay perks, but pretty good cosmetics. Obviously, fully voice acted by the person who voices him in the video games. Fully modeled as well. I believe they even gave behavior the model for it. I think Alan Wake is a solid B tier. Then we have All Things Wicked, probably one of the best original chapters that DBD could have brought. Obviously, I love Sable. Sable is one of my favorite survivors. I main her a lot, but Sable doesn't really have great perks, whereas Unknown has pretty good perks. Unknown is a super fun killer to play as and to play against. I'm not a huge fan of their map. I think their map is not great to play on a survivor. And on killer, if the survivors are smart and they don't do the gen at the statue and at movie theater until the last 3, then it's really hard to play against in that situation as killer. But besides that, it's really easy to play as killer. I mean, cosmetics wise, they both have had great cosmetics. This one's hard because I am biased because of Sable, but I think realistically, just because of the map and Sable's perks, I think realistically, All Things Wicked has to go in a B tier. It's a high B tier. It's almost A. But if Sable's perks were better, it would go into A. But because Sable's perks are so mid, it knocks down the rating quite a bit. But then we have last year's anniversary chapter. We have Dungeons and Dragons. A pretty big surprise. A lot of really weird chapter for some people. Brought in Vecna and the Bards, which was just the same slot but 2 different characters. Brought in super funny meme perks with the Bards. Brought in some relatively interesting perks with Vecna himself. Vecna being a super interesting killer himself and pretty fun to play. The map that they got is pretty mid though, not great. And their cosmetics, they haven't really gotten a ton of cosmetics. I think for that reason, I'm gonna rank Dungeons and Dragons a B tier. I think if they got a better map and more cosmetics, this would get bumped up to A, but I think as of right now, it's a B tier. Then we have Tomb Raider, another kind of weird, controversial chapter, or paragraph, I should say, that got brought in. Lara Croft, I love her cosmetics. Her perks are pretty fun. Finesse is a really good perk, but didn't come with a map or anything like that. I think because I rated Ghostface so high on how it is, I think because Laura's perks are pretty usable and pretty fun, and just the quality of Laura's model and her cosmetics and the voice acting and stuff, I think I have to rate Tomb Raider an A, simply because it's an all-arounder really good release from behavior. Then we can move on to Castlevania, another really good release. Dracula is a super fun killer, has 3 different forms. Survivor being Trevor Belmont is a really interesting survivor. Not really great perks, but Dracula is such a really good killer, has pretty decent perks, has a unique fact. If you're playing as Dracula, they don't get a map, but any original map, including the D&D map, gets the Dracula castle in the sky. But unfortunately, Trevor's perks aren't really great, and Jack's perks aren't amazing either. I think for that, I'm going to rate it a B. The cosmetics for them have been amazing, and Dracula's super fun to play as, but perks and the fact that they didn't get a map has to make them middle of the road. Now we have Doom Course. Unfortunately, as much as I was excited for this killer at the start because she comes with a dog, I truly hate Houndmaster. I think Houndmaster is terrible to play as and to play against. She's so clunky, so buggy. She's got some pretty decent perks. I like Make It Clap and No Quarter. She also got released with Tori, the Survivor. I don't really like Tori, but Tori does have a pretty decent perk, being the one where you take someone's hook stage. But Houndmaster is such a bad killer, and they don't really have great cosmetics, so much so that it's getting a C tier, especially because it didn't come with a map. It's getting a C tier. It's not D tier because it's got some factors to it that redeem itself, being mainly perks, but If it didn't have decent perks on either side, it would go straight to D tier. And we have one of the most controversial killers, one of the most controversial paragraphs ever released, being the Tokyo Ghoul chapter with Ghoul, Kaneki himself. Now, Kaneki is a immensely strong killer, another dash killer, and a killer that a lot of people don't like to go against. Now, in a objective form, Kaneki is very well designed into by Daylight. They did an amazing job making a realistic anime character. His power is really, really fun, and you have to admit, Kaneki is a super fun killer to play as, but not really to play against. He didn't come with a map. His perks are kind of okay. Like, for me, I'm a really big fan of Forever Entwined. I actually really like running Forever Entwined. But with how annoying it is to play against, and his perks are really great, and he hasn't really gotten any cosmetics since his release, Ghoul is going to be a B tier. That release just, maybe if he got a map, he'd go up to A tier, but for now he's going to be B. He's going to be a B rank. Then we have Steady Pulse Aurella. Now, Aurella's a fantastic survivor. Her perks are okay. I really do like Aurella. I like her cosmetics a lot. But there's not enough to make her an A tier. Her perks aren't super fun like Lara Croft's are. So for that, she's going to be paired with Ghoul at a B tier. Now, I am biased with this next one, the 9-year anniversary chapter, Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm immensely biased. Now, here's the thing. Even with my bias, I do think Springtrap is a very fun killer to play as and against. He's got quite a lot of mind game. His axe power is pretty fun to go against. He's got pretty great cosmetics. The map that he got is okay. Like, it's got a lot of detail inside the actual pizzeria itself, but on the outside, it's pretty plain, it's pretty sparse, not a whole lot of interesting loops. His perks, however, are pretty interesting. Phantom Fear gets used a lot. Haywire is okay. But the amount of detail and love that went into FNAF itself, I think I'm going to have to rate it in A. I'm not rating it at S simply because of the map. I think if the map was better, like if it had more detail outside of the pizzeria or better loops, more fun interactivity outside of the pizzeria itself, it get an S rank. But because the map itself is kind of lacking, FNAF is going to get an A tier. But there's a lot of love, a lot of effort went into it, a lot of detail, really good cosmetics, very fun killer to play as and against. So gonna be an A rank. We're on to the last two here, folks. It's gonna be a longer video, but we've got The Walking Dead. Now, they came with a map. It's probably one of the worst maps in the entire game because it's so weirdly sparse. Like, it doesn't have a whole lot of loops. It has a 3-gen that will always spawn. It's got a very weird green hue. And honestly, the perks that came with Rick and Michonne are pretty mid. They're not great. Last Stand has been getting quite a bit of use, but that's really the only one out of all the perks that gets any use. They've got really good cosmetics. They're getting another one getting released in this month of October. But I don't know. They've got really good voice acting, even though Michonne's not voiced by the actual actress for Michonne, but Rick's voiced by the actor. Daryl's voiced by the actor. Maggie's going to be voiced by the actor. I think with the amount of detail and the amount of fun that this chapter brought, I think it's going to be a B tier. It's going to be a low B, though. A very, very low B. And then we have Sinister Grace, the most recent chapter we released, and probably the most recent controversial chapter. Krasu has been a very controversial killer. I don't super find her that fun to play as. I definitely don't find her fun to play against. V is actually a very fun killer. Sorry, very fun survivor. Pretty fun perks on V. Pretty decent perks on Krasu as well. No map for them, unfortunately. But they both have pretty good cosmetics. But I think with just how annoying the killer is and how there's no map, I think it's going to get the same ranking as the Ghoul. It's going to be a B. And that's it. Those are my rankings. Now, this is, again, my personal opinion. But we got S rank, we've got Silent Hill, Nicolas Cage, and then D rank, we've got Nightmare on Elm Street, Ash vs. Evil Dead, Fighting of Kin, Forge and Fog, and Tools of Torment. This is my opinions for all the chapters / paragraphs we've gotten ever since 2016. But by all means, in the comments, let me know down below what your rankings would be for all the chapters. And by all means, give me your reasonings as to why. And if you're new around here, I try to make Dead by Daylight content every week. So if you like the content, you like the video, hit the like button. If you're new around here, hit subscribe. Hit the bell so you get notified whenever a new video goes live. Join the membership so you can get early access to videos when applicable, and you can get little emojis and a badge next to your name. But that's going to be it for me. Again, I'm going to enjoy my birthday weekend. I hope you all have a good weekend. And as always, I hope you all have a good morning, afternoon, and evening. Goodbye, everyone.